beautiful, that it's just overwhelmingly exciting. But as we saw last week, we saw Nebuchadnezzar commanded everyone to fall down and worship the golden image. The illustration of that would be a picture of absolute surrender and submission. And beloved, there is but one that has that authority, and his name is Jesus Christ. If anyone ever wants you to bow down or surrender to man or woman, authority, club, membership, gang, whatever the case may be, and you bow down and surrender to that authority, you've spit in the face of Jesus. The irony in that is all of us are guilty of that at one point or another in our lives. None of us are innocent. Hence the reason that Jesus came. Verse 8 says, therefore, at that time certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image that you have set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Maliciously accused. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been maliciously accused of anything? People don't like you. They're jealous of you. They're prejudiced of you. I've experienced all of these things. As a child of a military man, we traveled all over the world. Interestingly enough, every place that we ended up calling home for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it may be, it was a new set of jealousy, new set of prejudice, new set of malicious accusations. I'm sure that each and every person in here, if you think about it, can think of a time that you were maliciously accused of something. The Chaldeans are doing the same thing, and notice that they say the Jews designating. And if you have done your history homework, you know that the Chaldeans and the Jews didn't get along. So for them to say Jews, those Jews, they're saying we're prejudiced of, we're jealous of, we're hatred toward them. And because of that, we're going to maliciously accuse them. Why? To see if we can turn the king's opinion of them around so that they will no longer have any importance in our area. Remember, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are POWs in Babylon. They're not natives. So this is bred out of a heart of prejudice, possibly because of the elevation of importance given to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We saw that in chapter 2, verse 49, but we also see it in this text in verse 12, which I just read. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar had appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon as servants to the king. These are people that he expected of all people to bow down and worship his idol. Sometimes we get positions of authority in places, And when we get positions of authority in places, and this happens in every genre of work field there is in the world, some people will get elevated to positions of authority, and when they get elevated to positions of authority, all of a sudden there is a swelling that goes on, and when that swelling goes on, they then think that everybody should bow down to them. It's only until somebody comes along with a pen and pops the swelling and lets the air out of their head that they realize that they're not that important. Right? And that's kind of what's going on here. But notice the political style the Chaldeans use to prod the king. They say, "O king, live forever." So they utilize the professional, the politically correct way to address the king and saying, "O king, live forever." And then after they say, "O king, live forever," they begin to state their case. They say, "You, king, you," personal pronoun there, saying you, put a decree out, and the decree said that everybody was supposed to burn in a fiery furnace who didn't bow down to your golden image. In other words, they put the king up against a wall with his own decree saying, what we're about to tell you means that you have to do what we want done because you said you would do it. Sometimes we have to be careful of the rules and regulations that we put in place because they might come back to bite us later on. That's why we take time in making sure that whenever we write things out or agree to things here at Virginia Hill, we do so in such a manner that everybody has the appropriate amount of time to make a good and healthy, prayed over decision. Why? Because we want everybody to be healthy and serve healthily. But they use this political way to approach the king. And in doing so, they say they use his decree. And they said, because you said when the royal orchestra plays, everybody is supposed to fall down and worship you. But hey, king, guess what? You couldn't see in the back row back there. That's you, Baptist, right? I'm kidding. You couldn't see in the back row back there Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they didn't fall down in worship. So basically, what you going to do about that? What you going to do about that? You said they would be cast into a fiery furnace. And so let's look at the charges. Charge 1, pay no attention to you, king. They ignored your royal decree. They didn't serve your gods. You know, in Babylon at that time, we've already discovered and learned that they had multiple gods. And these Chaldeans are saying that these guys don't serve your gods. And not only that, king, they won't worship the golden image that you set up. We got 3 charges here. All 3 charges, which lead to your second point, which is the wrath of the king. The wrath of the king. Why? Because we read in verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar in furious rage commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. So he's angry. I guess we could use words. I actually looked up furious rage in my study books, and as I looked it up, one of the examples of that would be impassioned anger. What we would use today, maybe, or I use in my household anyway, is mad enough to spit nails. That's how mad Nebuchadnezzar is, and he commands that these guys be brought before him. So the interesting thing is that the accusers, I'm assuming, are the ones that have to go get them, or the royal army or the royal police have to go get them. and bring them from the back row to the front row in front of Nebuchadnezzar. And they stand in front of Nebuchadnezzar. And in standing in front of Nebuchadnezzar, and what does that give you a picture of there? Give you a picture of anything? You know, we all, if you're here today and you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you were on that back row at one point. The back row of life. Right? The despair of decay. And at some point or another, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you came forward, in a sense, to stand before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords and bow down to Him as Lord and Savior. Nebuchadnezzar says, bring those boys up here. I want to talk to them. And so they bring them forward. And here's the interesting thing is they bring them forward. Guess what happens? The king says, is this true? Is it true? I mean, the king appointed them over the affairs of the province of Babylon. These are supposed to be his royal men. His guys to look over his affairs. Guys to kind of be the mediators between the Chaldeans and the magicians and the astrologers and the Babylonians and then the Jewish folks. These guys are supposed to be the ones that are letting the king know everything that's going on, and almost in shock, the king says, is it true? Maybe that reminds you of a time you've asked those questions, those three words to your kid or your grandkid. They did something so ridiculous, you couldn't believe it. So you actually had to ask the question, is it true? I know my dad's had to ask that question many a time. I'd like to say I was never guilty, but we all know that's a lie. But almost shocked he asked that. And then he's stunned. Why? Because he gives them an opportunity to reconcile their relationship in front of him and all of those who are watching this spectacle go down. And what does he say? He says, if you will, at the sound of the royal orchestra, bow down and worship, well and good. Everything's okay. We'll be all right. The problem is, in the process of the king elevating himself to God's status, he neglected to remember whose friends these are. See, these are friends of Daniel. These are the guys that all were taken captive in Jerusalem and in Israel and brought to Babylon. These are the guys that worship the God that gave Daniel the ability to be able to not only tell the king his dream, but then interpret the dream. And why is that significant? It's significant because all of the king's men said only the gods could do that. So Nebuchadnezzar